Hey, welcome back. Today in this session, we're going to look at the mathematics section of the Hamilton Education Digital SAT 305. I hope you did well on it, but obviously, if you're here watching this video, you may have gotten one or two wrong and you want to see how it was done. Um, that's okay. You know, that's what this is here for. So let's get right into it. Oh, remember, you don't have to watch the entire video. You can go to the scroll bar and click on the question that you want. So let's get right into it. Question one on the first part of module two. So this is module two, section one, question one. For which value of k will the equation 6x minus 3 equal k times 2x minus 5 plus 4 have no solution? Well, let's write that out. 6x minus 3 equals, I'm going to go ahead and distribute the k, 2k times x minus 5k plus 4. Now, to have no solution, well, what that means is the two lines never cross. So we've got parallel lines. And parallel lines are going to have the same slope. And the equations that we have here has a line on one side, has a slope of 6 and a y-intercept of -3. Well, the slope on the other side must be the same for them to be parallel. So right away we know if 6 equals 2k, then k's got to be 3. Boom, there's our answer. And we can verify that right away because if we stick 3 into here, we're going to get 4 minus 15, which equals -11. So we'll have a line with a slope of 6, y-intercept at -3, a line with a slope of 6, y-intercept at -11. They'll never cross. There'll be no solution. F and only F, K is 3. So C is your answer. Question 2. If 3a equals -4 and 5b equals 9, what is the value of a minus b? Well, the first equation tells me that 3a, if I subtract 2 from both sides, is -6. So a must be -2. And the second equation, if I add 1 to both sides, I get 5b equals 10. So b must be 2. And a minus b must be -2 minus 2, which is -4. So you want to make sure you grid it in properly with a negative and then 4. Question 3. Brian had $12.99 to spend on Fleamu. He bought a particle accelerator for $7.50. He had a coupon. And he wants to buy some particles, which cost 59 cents each to accelerate. Because what good is a particle accelerator if you ain't got particles to accelerate? So Brian can easily determine the number of particles, P, that he can afford. Remember, we have a budget here of $12.99. So it should be the cost of the accelerator plus 59 cents for every particle has to be within or less than or equal to his budget of $12.99. And we can see this matches up perfectly. Well, switch the add-ins around, but it matches up with D, and D is the correct answer. Question 4. If 4x plus 3y equals 7, then which of the following gives y in terms of x? So I need to solve this for y. Well, the first move, I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. And I'll have 3y equals -4x plus 7. Then I'll isolate y by dividing by 3. So I divide this by 3, I got -4/3 x. Divide this by 3, I got 7/3. So I want the one that says 7/3 minus 4/3 x. There it is right next to it. So B is the correct answer. One of the lines in a linear system of equations is given as x plus 2y equals 11. And the other line is defined as 3y plus 2x equals 15. There is a single solution at the point AB. What is the sum of A and B? Well, let's take the lines. I'll take the first line and we'll say, what's going to happen there? I could say that A plus 2B equals 11. And then the next line, well, I'm going to put it in the same order. I'm going to plug A in for X. So 2A plus 3B would equal 15. And I noticed something right away, and this is something that SAT used to do all the time, but now they do it about half the time, is where when you're given the two lines, if you take them and just subtract one line from the other, the answer appears right in front of you. So I'm going to take this line, A plus 2B equals 11, and I'm going to take it away from 2A plus 3B equals 15. So 2A minus A gives me A, and 3B minus 2B gives me B, and 15 minus 11 gives me 4, so the sum of A and B is 4. C is your answer. Question 6. The cost for a rental car is D dollars from a certain rental agency. The rental agency calculates their rental fees using the equation D equals 0.234F plus 5750 for X miles that the car is driven while rented. Which of the following statements correctly describes the rate of change of the agency's fee model? Well, the rate of change is going to be the slope. And since D is in dollars, then 0.234 must imply 23.4 cents or $0.234. And that's per mile. That makes sense because if we have that per mile and we multiply it by X miles, then that's the cost per mile. And you add that to 5750, you get the total charge. Well, as I look at the answers, I see for every 10 miles, well, then if I go 10 miles, that's going to be 10 times 0.234 is 234 for 10 miles. And so I want the one that says the cost is going to be for every 10 miles, I spend $2.34. And I do see that right here in C. So C is your correct answer. For every 10 miles you drive, you're spending $2.34, 23.4 cents per mile times 10. Question number 7. Which of the following values is closest to the slope of a line parallel to the line containing these 2 points? And remember, parallel, as we mentioned in an earlier problem, means same slope. Same slope. So the slope given is going to be the change in y, 9 minus -1, over the respective change in x, -4 minus 2. So I'm going to get 10 over -6, which is going to be -5/3, which as a decimal would be -1.6 repeating. A is the correct answer. Question 8. If negative absolute value of -x is less than 0, what must be true regarding the value of x? Well, I know that if I were to stick any number in there, I'm going to get the negative of that number. But then the absolute value is going to make it positive. But then the negative on the outside is going to make it negative again. And I think, I could probably stick any number, but wait a second. I note that the negative of the absolute value of the negative of 0 is equal to 0, and 0 is not less than itself. So any number can go in there and it's going to come out to the left of 0 on the number line, except for 0. So there's only one real value that doesn't work, and that makes C the correct answer. Question 9. If x is between -4 and 6 inclusive, and y is between -2 and 7 inclusive, what is the maximum value for the absolute value of y minus x plus 1? Well, the thing here is to make the absolute value phrase as big as possible. And then I just add 1 on to that. And I note that I can make the thing inside the absolute value as positive as possible or as negative as possible. And it's always going to come out positive, and it will provide me with a max. Now, the trick is to look at the difference of the bounds. I'm going to look at what would 7 minus 6 be? 7 minus 6 equals 1. What would 7 minus -4 be? 7 minus -4 is going to be 11. What would -2 minus 6 be? -2 minus 6 is going to be -8, which when I take the absolute value would be +8. -2 minus -4, well, that'd be -2 minus -4 is going to be +2. Now, the absolute value of 1, the absolute value of 11, the absolute value of -8, the absolute value of 2, the biggest one happens at 11. So 11 plus 1 equals 12. 12 is the maximum of the given expression. Question 10. The points -2, 2 and 8, 14, A and B respectively, are on some line K. And there's another point, C, that's on K, where AC is 1/4 of the length of AB. Which of the following points could be point C? Well, I found the best way to do this is to draw it. So I'm going to draw an XY coordinate system here. And I'm going to label the points. Here's -2, 2. Here's 8, 14. Try to be as accurate as possible. You don't have to be, but it makes it nice in order to get the scale relatively correct. And then I'm going to have a line. I'll make it reddish. That goes through these 2 points. This is line K. Sort of. Let's see if there, that's better. Now, what I want to note here is that, well, if I go over horizontally from -2 to 8, I note that this is 10. And if I go up from 2 to 14, I note that this is 12. And I start thinking, I could cut this line right here in quarters and extend it up. And each of those then are going to be proportionally similar triangles. And this length here from A, we'll call that C for the moment, would be 1/4 of the entire length. And so this would be, I went over 2.5, so that's at 1/2. And then I went over 2.5, so that's going to be at 3. And then I went over 2.5, so that's going to be at 11/2. And then 2.5 puts me at 8. So if I look at this right here, that's 1/4 of the base of that right triangle I just drew there. And then the vertical of that goes straight up and cuts that chunk off of AB. Here's B, here's A. But then I note that I don't have a 1/2 something. And I know this, that, well, if I were to go back 2.5 and then down, that would be a similar triangle to the right triangle on the other side. And so that would put me at -4.5, and that would put me at -1, and that point is on there. And this length here from A to that C, I'll call this C prime right now, that is now 1/4 of what AB would be. So D is your answer. That's a fun problem. Well, maybe not for you, but it was for me. You thought it was fun, didn't you, Reed? I did. I mean, golly, come on. Barrel of Monkeys, that one. And is a Barrel of Monkeys really fun? I think it would be kind of dangerous. Question 11. In question 11, the table below shows a linear relationship. So it's going to have a slope. And I can see that if I went up 5 here, I went up 15 there. So the slope has got to be 3, which tells me that it's not C or it's not D. It's going to be A or B. And then I note this. Well, if I were to go back 3, then I would go back 9 from 3.5, 7.5. And this would put me at 1/2. And this would put me then at -2.5. So the y-intercept has got to be close to -3. And if I look down here at B, I could rewrite this as y equals 3x minus 3. So B is my best friend right now. And B is the answer. Question 11. In question 11, the table below shows a linear relationship. So it's going to have a slope. And I can see that if I went up 5 here, I went up 15 there. So the slope has got to be 3, which tells me that it's not C or it's not D. It's going to be A or B. And then I note this. Well, if I were to go back 3, then I would go back 9 from 3.5, 7.5. And this would put me at 1/2. And this would put me then at -2.5. So the y-intercept has got to be close to -3. And if I look down here at B, I could rewrite this as y equals 3x minus 3. So B is my best friend right now. Question 12. Which of the following points is a solution to the system of linear inequalities shown above? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, you can just graph this as it is in Desmos. And what you're going to find is you'll have something that looks like this. You'll have a vertical line at -1, pardon me, and it'll be shaded to the right. You'll have a horizontal line at 4, and it'll be shaded below. And you'll have a line that goes through -5 that forms a triangle of darker shade right in the middle here. And you want to know which of the following points below would be within that triangle. Because you could rewrite this thing as y is greater than x minus 5. So here's -5. Here's -1. Here's 4. Well, note right away that there's no or equals to here. So any line that has a point that has a y that's 4 can't be in this solution space because the line y equals 4 is not in the solution space. And any point that has an x value of -1 can't be in the solution space because that dashed line is a border, so it's not in the solution space. Now I can now plug points in. It makes it a little bit easier. I could have done that to begin with, but if I take B and I plug that into the last inequality, because I can see right away here that in B, x is greater than -1 and y is less than 4. And I note that 5 minus 2 is less than 5. The answer must be B. It's got to be B because I note that 2 minus -3 equals 5. It's not less than 5. So D can't be an answer. We already showed that A and C can't be. So B is your best friend on this one. Question 13. If two lines form a linear system of equation that has more than one possible solution, what must be true regarding the two lines? Well, the three things that can happen with a system of lines is one, they cross at a single point. So there's one solution. Two, they never cross. So there's no solutions. Or the third one, they are crossing at every point because they're the same line. So they would have more than one solution. Infinite, that's more than one. So they must be the same line. So every value of x that I stick into the solution on one line is going to give me a set of y's. Well, that'd be the same for the other line in this particular system, that the lines are the same thing. They have coincidental ranges because they have coincidental domains, i.e. they're the same. So D is your correct solution. Question 14. A group of physics students were observing the constant rate of motion of a toy car along a straight line. The table below records the distance d in decimeters that the car was from a fixed point on the line t seconds after the car passed that point. And we got a table of values when t is 0, d is 18, 1, 2, 5, 10, and respective d values. Which equation below represents a model of the relationship between time t and distance traveled d? And I look down and I see all of the equations are t defined by d. So t is a function of d in all of these answers, which means in effect, d is x and t is y. So for every 4 I go up in x, you can see that it's 4, 4, 4. And then if we go up 1 and 1, and then if we go up 3, we go up 12. And then if we go up 5, we're going to go up 20. And so the slope then, change in y over x, is going to be 1/4. And so we look down and see that, well, it's not going to be A, it's not going to be B, It's not going to be D. The only equation that has a slope of 1/4 is C. And you can see that by taking y equals 1/4 of x minus 18 plus 0. So I use the point slope form, and I use that point as a dt or xy point on this line. So y equals 1/4 x minus 18 over 4, or y equals 1/4 x minus reduce 18 over 4 to 9/2, and C is definitely the answer. Question 15. In question 15, we're given parallelogram ABCD is placed onto a coordinate plane so that the vertices are located as depicted. Which answer choice is an equation of the line that passes through the vertices A and C? And so we want to know what's the equation of this line that goes through the 2 points where we know their address on those vertices right there. Well, we can find the slope quite readily. I can see that the slope of that line is going to be 4 minus 1 over 5 minus -1, which is going to be 3 over 6, 1/2. So the slope is positive 1/2. We can take away C and D. And then I note that, well, the other 2 equations in the answers don't seem to have any of these points on there. But I do note that, well, if the slope is 1/2, if I go over 2 here, I'd go up 1 there. And that would put me on the slope 7/5, which is represented in the equation here. In fact, I could see that y would be slope times x minus the x value of that point on the line, plus the y value of that point on the line. And B is the correct answer. Question 16. The ratio of Janine's age to her nephew's age is 8:3. And the sum of their ages is 55. Well, looking at Janine to her nephew, we should have 8 times some number to 3 times that same some number. And this implies then that 8x plus 3x would be 55, or 11x equals 55. So x equals 5. And Janine to her nephew would be 40 to 15. And those add up to 55, and that makes Janine's nephew 15. Number 17. There are 4 different taco shops near Una's house, and she wants to buy burritos for herself and 5 friends. So 6 burritos. The prices and deals before tax for burritos at each shop are shown in the table below. At which of the shops would Una pay the least if she has to pay 6% sales tax for the 6 burritos purchased? Well, first of all, that's having to pay 6% sales tax for burritos purchase means that's going to be 1.06 applied for the total at every shop. So I don't really have to calculate what the tax is, because I just have to find out what the least cost would be for the burritos. Applying 1.6 is just going to adjust that, but the hierarchy, lowest to highest, is still going to stay the same. So I got to buy 6 burritos, or Una does. And if I look at shop 1, I can buy 1 for $8 or 2 for $14.99. And 2 for $14.99 actually saves Una money than buying them for $8 a piece. So she's going to have 3 times $14.99 would be $44.97. from shop 1. From shop 2, she could pay $8.50 for 6 burritos, and that's going to be $51. Or she could just buy 2 batches of 3 burritos each for $20.99. So if she just buys 2 of the 3 for deal, she's going to pay $41.98. So far, shop 2 is looking good. If she goes to shop 3, she'll pay 8.25 per burrito, or 4 burritos for $25.96. Now, we're not sure she can cut the 4 burrito deal in half, but we do know that she can pay for 4 burritos, $25.96, and then pay an extra $16.50 for 2 extra burritos. And so that's going to be $42.46. So store 2 is still in the lead. For store 4, buy 2, well, $10.50 a piece. They better be good burritos, or buy 2 for $21.10, and you get 1 free so you're getting 3 for $21.10. So if I get 2 of the, or she gets 2 of the $21.10 deals, she's going to spend $42.20, and that'll give her 6 burritos. And it seems like the best price for 6 burritos is going to come from store 2. And so B would be your best choice, or Una's best choice. And now I'm hungry for burritos. Question 18. If the value of a certain computer brand appreciated by 15% the first year after it was purchased, then depreciated again by 10% the second year after it was purchased, what percent of the original value does the computer retain after those first 2 years? Well, if I let C be the price of the computer when it was purchased, the first year goes by and we take away 15%, so it's now worth 85% of what it was originally. Then the next year goes by and that value drops by 10%. So it's now worth 90% of 85% of the original price. And if I take the product of these, I get 0.765 times C. So it is retained 76.5% of its original price. D is the correct answer. Question 19. In question 19, we're told that 27x squared minus mx plus 15 is equal to the product of the quantity 3x minus 9 and px plus 3. Now, this is called a comparative equation. We've got that 27x squared minus m times x plus 15 has to be equal to, I'm going to multiply out the right side, 3p times x squared minus np minus 9 times x minus 3n. Now, I can compare then the coefficients, that 27 and 3p must be the same number. So p must be 9. And negative 3n and 15 are the same number. So n must equal negative 5. And m and np minus 9 must be the same number. So negative 5 times 9 minus 9 would equal negative 54. So m equals negative 54, and A is the correct answer. Question 20. In question 20, we have that a certain type of protozoa, or single-celled animal, can replicate by dividing into 2 new protozoa every 40 minutes under ideal culture conditions. And if we had 1,000 of these protozoa in ideal culture conditions for 6 hours and allowed them to grow, How many thousand protozoa should we expect at the end of that 6 hours? Well, you can do this quite quickly by just doubling 1,000. Well, in 6 hours is going to be, 360 minutes. And 360 divided by 40 is going to be 9. So we're going to double 9 times. So we've got 9 doublings. So we double once, 2,000, double again, 4,000, double again, 8,000, double again, 16 grand, then 32,000, then 64,000, then 128,000, then 256,000. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 512,000 on the 9th doubling. So 512 should be your answer. Now you could also have done this. I could have taken 1,000 times 2 to the 9th, and that would equal 512,000. So 512 is still your answer. Number 21, if the graph of the function f of x equals x cubed minus 8x squared minus 4x plus 32 resembles the line y equals 1, a horizontal line, but it's got 3 holes in it. Well, to have 3 holes means we factored away 3 things on the bottom. And note that we can write this as x minus p times x plus 2 times x minus 2. So to equal the line y equals 1, well, that fraction must equal 1 for every number we stick in, but p, 2, and negative 2. Which means that if I multiply x minus p times x squared minus 4, that's got to equal x cubed minus 8x squared minus 4x plus 32. Now, I'm only worried about what p is here. And I note this, that if I multiply negative p times negative 4, that's going to be the constant term on the end when I FOIL this thing out. So 4p would be 32, and p would be 8. What is the value of n that makes the equation the absolute value of the square root of n minus 2 equal 12 true? Well, for an absolute value to equal 12, then the thing inside the absolute value could be negative 12, or it could be positive 12. Now, if rad n minus 2 equals negative 12, we're going to get rad n equals, adding 2 to both sides, negative 10. And that's not possible on SAT. You can't have a radical return a negative value on SAT math. So that can't be a solution. But if we set rad n minus 2 equal to positive 12, then rad n adding 2 to both sides would be 14. Squaring both sides, we get n would be 196. So n is 196, and that's the answer. Second section, question 1. If 4x plus a over 3x plus 6 is equal to 8x minus 3 over 6x plus b is true for all positive values of x, and a and b represent constants, then what is the sum of all possible values for a? Now, an easy way to do this is to graph both sides of the equation and put in sliders for a and b until these two things coincide. But you could also cross multiply. If I cross multiply the top, cross multiply, I'm going to get 4x plus a times 6x plus b is going to equal 8x minus 3 times 3x plus 6. And then I'm going to FOIL out both sides and just compare coefficients. So I'll get 24x squared plus 6a plus 4b times x b plus ab is going to equal 24x squared, and then I'll get 48 minus 9 will give me plus 39x, and then I'll get negative 18. So I have a system where 6a plus 4b has to equal 39, and ab equals negative 18. Now, again, I could graph that. I could graph this one as 6x plus 4y equals 39, and b equals negative 18 over a. So I could have done that and graphed it. But now that I have a system, well, I know that b could be written as negative 18 over a. So now I'd have 6a plus, actually minus 4 times 18 over a is going to equal 39. Then multiply that whole thing by a, and I'll have 6a squared minus 4 times 18 is going to be 72, would equal 39a. Subtract 39a from both sides, and I'm going to find that a can equal 8 or negative 3 halves. And if I take the sum of those two, C is my only choice for an answer, 13 halves or 6.5. Question 2. Given the equation y equals the quantity x minus h squared plus 12, where h is a positive integer, if the sum of the zeros of the equation is 8, what is the product of those zeros? Well, remember this fact. Given ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, then the sum of the roots is going to be found as negative b over a. And the product of the roots is going to be found as c over a. So I'm going to put this thing into standard form. So if I multiply out the x minus h squared, I'll get x squared minus 2hx plus h squared, then add on the 12, I'll set that equal to 0. Now here we can see that a equals 1, that b equals negative 2h, and that c equals h squared plus 12. And we do know from above that the sum of the roots is negative b over a. So negative 2h over 1 must equal 8, which means that negative 2h equals 8, which means that h equals 4. And then I can plug that into here, and I find out that c over 1, a is 1, is going to equal 16 plus 12. So 28 is my answer. Question 3. The product of two positive integers is 80, and one of the integers is 12 more than twice the other. What's the value of the least integer? Well, I'm going to let n be the thing I got to find. Let n be the least integer. And I know it's the least because the other one is going to be 2n plus 12. So that's the biggest. So now I know that the product of these two is 80. So n times 2n plus 12 equals 80, or 2n squared plus 12n minus 80 equals 0, which is the same as n squared plus 6n minus 40 equals 0, which is easier to factor because n plus 10 times n minus 4 would give me the plus 6n in the middle and the negative 40 at the end. And this tells me right away that n has to be 4 because I want the positive solution. Negative 10 is the other one. For question 4, what is the solution to the equation rad x minus a plus rad x to the 1/2 equals 2? Well, the first thing I'm going to do is square both sides to get rid of that 1/2 exponent. So I'm going to have rad x minus 8 plus rad x would have to equal 4. So I just squared both sides. Now, an easy way to do this is just plug answers in until I get the right one. Obviously, 4 can't work because if I plug 4 into the first one, I get the square root of negative 4. So it can't be that one. If I plug 8 in, well, I'm going to get 0 plus the square root of 8, which isn't 4. If I plug 9 in, ooh, I'm going to get 1, and then I'll get rad 9, and that equals 1 plus 3, and that equals 4. C is the answer. Now you're wondering, that's too easy. Well, I could have taken both sides to the 4th power and gone from there. And then I would have had to isolate a radical, get everything on the, and then square it again. And the algebra would have taken a long time. It's a time test. Plugging in the answers is mathematical. It's not cheating. For question 5, the function g of x equals 2/3 of the quantity x plus 4 times the quantity x minus 1 times the quantity x minus 5 is defined as some function of x. And it would be a 3rd degree polynomial, nice, continuous, wavy, look like a snake. Which of the following tables below accurately represents the function h of x, which is g of x minus 5? Note something about g of x. If x equals negative 4, 1, or 5, then g of x equals 0. And all of the numbers for x in every one of the answers are the ones that make g of x equals 0. So 0 minus 5 is negative 5, which means that if I stick in any of those 3 numbers, I'm going to get out negative 5. So D is the correct answer. Question 6. The growth of the population of a certain county, represented by the function p of p, increases each year by 1.7% of the previous year. Well, what that tells me right away is that this is an exponential function. It's exponential. So which of the following functions provides the best model? Well, it's going to be the one that's exponential, and these two are linear. Those are linear. So it's got to be A or B. And the fact that it went up by 1.7%, well, I'm going to relate that to the simple growth formula, which is going to be the initial value times 1 plus the rate to time. And the rate here was 1.7%. which as a decimal would be 0.017. So I want the one that has 1.017 in parens, and then t as an exponent. So B is the correct answer. Question 7. If the number 10 is subtracted by the absolute value of the quantity of 7 lessened by the square of some unknown value, and that entire value is found as, at most, 7 in number, what must be true regarding any value of the unknown value? Okay, cool. So we have an unknown value. I'm going to say let the unknown value be n. And now I'm going to translate the words into some sort of algebraic thing I can play with. So the number 10 is subtracted by, so that would be 10 minus the absolute value of 7 minus our unknown squared, has to be at most less than or equal to 7. Okay, now we're set up. So when we have a situation like this, well, what we want to do is isolate the absolute value. And so if I do that, well, I can subtract 7 from both sides and add the absolute value. So I'm going to end up with 3 is going to be less than or equal to the absolute value of 7 minus n squared. So I added abs val 7 minus n squared to both sides. I subtracted 7 from both sides. Now, when I have an absolute value greater than or equal to some constant, well, I'm going to have that thing is going to be greater than or equal to that constant, or it's going to be less than or equal to the negative of that constant. And so what I have to do is look at two different cases. That we have either 7 minus n squared is going to be less than or equal to -3, or we're going to have that 7 minus n squared has to be greater than or equal to +3. Now, on the left here, it has to be less than or equal to -3. Well, that's the thing inside the absolute value. So if we take the positive of that, then it has to be greater than or equal to +3. So we'll solve this. Now, if I were to add 3 to both sides and add n squared to both sides of the inequality on the left side here, I'm going to get 10 is less than or equal to n squared. And if I take the square root of both sides, I'm going to get rad 10 is going to be less than or equal to abs val of n. Remember, the square root of a perfect square in SAT is the abs val, or positive value. So now I know, using the same idea, I have an abs val that's greater than a constant. So I should have that n is going to be less than or equal to negative rad 10, or n is going to be greater than or equal to positive rad 10. And then I go to the other side, and I can subtract 3, add n squared. I'll get 4 is greater than or equal to n squared. And if I take the square root of both sides, I'll get the absolute value of n is then going to be less than or equal to 2. Now, an absolute value less than or equal to a constant means that we pull off the abs bars. That number has to be between 2 and -2. And so now we have an answer that the number that's unknown has to fit this particular, set of constraints. So I go over the answer. The unknown value is between -2 and 2 inclusive, or the unknown value is greater than square root of 10, less than square root of 10. So it has to be n, because that's exactly what we came up with. Look at the other ones, the unknowns between the positive and negative. No, that's not true. All possible values for the unknown must be non-positive. No, some could be negative. There are no, well, no, we found some. So these can be tossed out. And again, A is verified as the correct answer, the one that must be true. Number 8, let's do that one now. Number 8, for a biostats lab project relating a person's hair color to their naturally preferred handedness, right, left, ambi, Nando observed the students on his campus over a 4-hour period. He randomly chose 300 people and verified their handedness as he recorded their hair color. His data is recorded in the table below. Using Nando's data, what would be a reasonable estimate for the number of left-handed people out of the document 1,102 redheads that are on Nando's campus? Well, he only really talked to 80 of them, and he found that 26 of them, so 26 out of 80 redheads, were left-handed. That's the same as 13 out of 40. So reasonably, because he did look at a large number, and I got the hiccups. We can take that number, 13 over 40, and multiply 1102, and we're going to get 358 and a decimal, 0.15-ish. So 358 would be a very reasonable. In fact, that, based on the data, would be the most reasonable. But because it is statistics, we can smudge it a little bit to the top and the bottom. So we'll accept 357, 358, or 359 as an answer. But if you got 358, then you're probably not even watching this video. Question 9. Katani has interviewed a dozen applicants, all different heights, for 4 job positions. Posting. He's placed. She interviewed every candidate via video chat and found that each was equally qualified for any of the 4 positions to be offered. And she decides to just randomly pick 4 of the candidates she interviewed. And we want to know, what would be the percent probability that Katani picked the 2 shortest and the 2 tallest candidates of the 12 to fill the positions? Well, let's consider what we've got here, what Katani has. She doesn't know the heights, but, if we do stick them all together, there's going to be a couple of short people, and there'll be 2 tall people. So we'll call the tallest T1. We'll call the second tallest T2. We'll call the shortest S1. We'll call the second shortest S2. And then there's 8 people between those 4. And what I just said there, those 4, well, there's 4 job openings. And if we randomly then pick from those 4, well, there's 4 out of 12 that can fill the first position. So this is job 1, 2, 3, 4. And you don't have to use the same subscripting or anything. Common sense is common sense. Once I pick, say, that was the shortest. Once I pick them, there's 3 people left, 2 talls and a short. Well, there's 3 out of 11 now that are either among the shortest and tallest. So I don't care who the individuals are. I just know there's 4 of them. And then I pick that one, say it was the second tallest. And now I've got 2 left. So there's 2 out of the 10 left that I can pick from that would be in those original 4. And then there's 1 out of the 9 left, because say I pick shorty 2, then I've got tallie 1. And so I could have had any string of those, but they'd all be equal in effect to 4 over 12 times 3 over 11 times 2 over 10 times 1 over 9. And that just happens to be available as an answer. And it's the correct answer. C. Question 10. 11 consecutive positive values are transformed into a new set of values by some sort of linear rule, where each value is increased by some constant. This new set has a median value of m, a range of r, an average or mean of a, and a standard deviation of s. What's the value of r over s times n minus m minus a? Well, let's make this very simple to understand. There's 11 consecutive values. So let's say I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. Whoops, I forgot 7, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. And I put them through some sort of transformation. I mean, I could have multiplied them by 3 and added 4. I'm still going to have the same difference between each value that comes out, no matter what the linear rule was. You know, I could have just added 5 to everything, and then I'd have 6, 7, 8, 9, all the way up to 16. But the basic idea here is that in a consecutive set of values that are in this order that we see, consecutive set of data, that the average of the first and last is the same as the average of the second and second to last, which is the same as the average of the third to last, and fourth to last, and fifth to last, which is equal to the average of the entire set, which happens to also be the median. So in a set of consecutive data, the mean and the median are the same number. So in this one, m equaled n, and m minus a equals 0. And anything times 0 equals 0. So A is your answer. I didn't mean to yell. I was just getting all excited about it. You can edit out the yell part at the end there. I can smell the finish line. I'm just getting a little too glib. Question 11. Dataset A has a range of R, a median of M, a mean and mode both equal to M, and a standard deviation of S. If every value in dataset A is scaled by 4 to form dataset B, what must not be true? What must not be true regarding a point statistic comparison of the two data sets? Well, similar to problems that we had earlier, if I take some data set A and I multiply every data point by some number, here by 4, what's going to happen is that the range is going to expand by scaling of 4. So A is true. The standard deviation of the data set is twice the standard deviation of data set B. That's not necessarily true. The standard deviation, the spread, as it's represented then, should be relatively the same. I mean, the scaling of the spread should be by 4 as well. The mode of dataset B is 4 times the mode of dataset A. That would be true. The average of the median and the mean of dataset A is 1/4. Well, yeah, because everything in B is 4 times, then we should have that as true. So the one that was a little shaky, B, that's not necessarily true. So B is your correct answer. Question 12. Question 12 takes up half of a page. Question 13 isn't that much better, it looks like. But question 12. Prices of video games sold from 2014 to 2019. So we have what's called a normal distribution, which is centered around the mean. Here, the mean would be 45. That's the average of all of the data. And we have what's called a box and whisker plot, which is centered around the median versus the mean. And so this tells us that, well, the median of all the data is 50. 50. Okay, cool. Data scientists collected data of video game prices. So the horizontal numbers are prices for video games. 50 randomly selected video game stores in the United States from 2014 to 2019. So this is from 50 stores. The data was graphed using mean, centric, normal centric, standard deviation of 15, median centric, minimum price of 10, maximum of 80. So we can see the range of this thing is 70. And that the inner quartile, well, 50 is right in the middle, and then 35 is halfway between 70 and 10, and then 60. We can see that most of the prices are kind of in that box right there, and there's some stretch on the whiskers. Which of the following claims are supported by the data? So 68% of the video game prices were between $35 and $60. Well, this is going to refer to the normal distribution, where we're using what's called the empirical rule. For a normal distribution says that within plus or minus one standard deviation, 68% of the data is found. Within two standard deviations, 95% of the data is found. Within three standard deviations, 99.5. So this is often called the 68, 95, 99 rule. Well, the problem here is that this would be between 30 and 60, and this says between 35 and 60. So that wouldn't be the full 68%. So one isn't true. We can't make that claim. If it said 30 and 60, we could make that claim. For number two, approximately 50% of the data, half of the video game prices were between 10 and 50. Well, that is true because on a box and whisker plot, half of the data is lower than the median and half of the data is higher than the median. And so approximately 50%, according to the box and whisker plot, is between 10, the bottom of the range, and 50, the median. 2 is true. We can infer that. For number three, the number of games sold at $45 was greater than the number of games sold at $50. Well, we can't necessarily say that. We do know that according to the normal distribution, the average price was 50. But the number of games would have been more inferred by the box and whisker plot, which says that the number of games above 50 was equal to the number of games below 50. So we can't say 3 is true. So the only thing we can say is true is 2. And so that would be B as the correct answer. I couldn't squeeze it in there. Let me see if I can shuffle it up a little bit. Sorry. Whoops, other way. See it down there? B is the answer. Question 12. Question 12 takes up half of a page. Question 13 isn't that much better, it looks like. But question 12. prices of video games sold from 2014 to 2019. So we have what's called a normal distribution, which is centered around the mean. Here, the mean would be 45. That's the average of all of the data. And we have what's called a box and whisker plot, which is centered around the median versus the mean. And so this tells us that, well, the median of all the data is 50. 50. Okay, cool. Data scientists collected data of video game prices. So the horizontal numbers are prices for video games. 50 randomly selected video game stores in the United States from 2014 to 2019. So this is from 50 stores. The data was graphed using mean, centric, normal centric, standard deviation of 15, median centric, minimum price of 10, maximum of 80. So we can see the range of this thing is 70. And that the inner quartile, well, 50 is right in the middle, and then 35 is halfway between 70 and 10, and then 60. We can see that most of the prices are kind of in that box right there, and there's some stretch on the whiskers. Which of the following claims are supported by the data? So 68% of the video game prices were between $35 and $60. Well, this is going to refer to the normal distribution, where we're using what's called the empirical rule. For a normal distribution says that within plus or minus one standard deviation, 68% of the data is found. Within two standard deviations, 95% of the data is found. Within three standard deviations, 99.5. So this is often called the 68, 95, 99 rule. Well, the problem here is that this would be between 30 and 60, and this says between 35 and 60. So that wouldn't be the full 68%. So one isn't true. We can't make that claim. If it said 30 and 60, we could make that claim. For number two, approximately 50% of the data, half of the video game prices, were between 10 and 50. Well, that is true, because on a box and whisker plot, half of the data is lower than the median, and half of the data is higher than the median. And so approximately 50%, according to the box and whisker plot, is between 10, the bottom of the range, and 50, the median. 2 is true. We can infer that. For number three, the number of games sold at $45 was greater than the number of games sold at $50. Well, we can't necessarily say that. We do know that according to the normal distribution, the average price was 50, but the number of games would have been more inferred by the box and whisker plot, which says that the number of games above 50 was equal to the number of games below 50. So we can't say 3 is true. So the only thing we can say is true is 2. And so that would be B as the correct answer. I couldn't squeeze it in there. Let me see if I can shuffle it up a little bit. Sorry. Whoops, other way. See it down there? B is the answer. Number 13, the table below shows the distribution of 32 values in dataset X. Dataset Y is generated by subtracting 7 from every data value in dataset X. And so if this is X, then we can pretty much say that Y is going to be 15 minus 7, then 20 minus 7, 25 minus 7, 30 minus 7, 35 minus 7, 40 minus 7. So y is going to be that set. And the frequency of 8 would be 2, of 13 would be 4, 18, 7, so respectively. What we had then is this idea that we had a range from 40 to 15, and it just got shifted to the left on a number line. So now it's 33 to 8. And it just got moved down by 7, but it's the same length. And we'd have the same number, 2, 4, 7, 9, whatever the values are in there. Well, now we can answer the question, because they say, which of the following best compares the mean, median, mode, range of the two data sets? Well, as I just said, the range of y is going to be the same as the range of x, just high minus low, just shifted over by 7. So the range of both sets are equal, which means it's not C nor D. And, well, the mean and median of x would now be each 7 less than the mean, or for mean and median of y would be 7 less of the mean and median of x. So we should have the mean of x is 7 more than the mean of y, which gives us A as the best choice and the correct answer. Question 14. 3 years ago, Benito sold C chocolate bars for his soccer team annual fundraiser. Soccer team's annual fundraiser. 2 years ago, he sold 115 percent more than he did 3 years ago. And then last year, he sold 125% more than he did the previous year. And we want to know which of the following shows us what he's got to do to beat the least number in his quest to sell chocolate. Well, if C was the number that he sold 3 years ago, and he bested that by 115%, then he sold 225%, or 2.25 times his previous year in that 2 year ago sales time. And then he bested that by 125, so that would be 2.25 times 2 years ago. And if I take this product here, I get 4.84 times his original or lease number that he sold. So that directs us straight to D as the correct answer. Now, was the wording kooky in this? Yes, it was, but expect that on SAT mathematics. Question 15. We're given the equation of a circle. We're comparing it to x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared, where the center is at hk and the radius is r. And so we see right here that this is 13 squared. So we have a circle that's centered at 5, -12, and its radius is 13. Now, the center is reflected, the whole circle, but we're going to take the center and reflect that over the x-axis and then again over the y-axis. And we get a new circle. Well, let's draw it. I mean, it's not too hard to do. If I take this circle that's centered at 512, let me move this over just a little bit and straighten it out. there. So 5, -12 is the original. And that's going to be reflected over the x-axis upstairs to 5, 12. Then that's going to be reflected over the y-axis to -5, 12. So our new center is at -5, 12, which means we've got x plus 5 squared plus y minus 12 squared equals 13 squared. And so we want to know, hey, what did we do to go from the original equation in order to get to the new equation? Well, what would we have added to -5 in order to get to 5? So A must be 10. And what would we have added to -12 in order to get to +12? Well, we would have added 24. And we want to know what's the sum of 10 and 24? Well, 34. Question 16. Let me shrink it down, get it all up in there. Question 16. We're given a cube, and it's got edges of x. So this is x, and this is x, and this is x. And we have that the diagonal on the face there, in fact, the diagonal of any face is given as A. Well, that tells us that the edge length must be A divided by rad 2 by the 45, 45, 90 right triangle rule. Remember, you can look on the reference, is that if I have a side of A, then the diagonal of that square, this is the diagonal of a square, is going to be A rad 2. So if I have hypotenuse of A, then these guys got to be A over rad 2. Because the edge length or leg times rad 2 is the hypotenuse. And so if we look at this down here, that's a right triangle with sides of A rad 2 and a hypotenuse of A. And D, well, a fact about a cube is that if we know the edge length of a cube, then the diagonal is the edge length times rad 3. So D must be equal to A over rad 2 times rad 3, which would be A rad 3 over rad 2, which we can rationalize by multiplying by rad 2 over rad 2. And we're going to get A rad 6 over 2. C is your answer. Trapezoid mid-segment joins the midpoint of the non-parallel side. So BE, which we're told is 10, is the mid-segment of this trapezoid. It connects the midpoints of each of the non-parallel sides. And we're told that the height of one of these is 7.5. In fact, both of them are 7.5. So the height of the whole thing is 2 times 7.5 is 15. Now, here's a fact about midsegments in quadrilaterals of this type. The midsegment, BE in this case, has to be the average of the lengths of the parallel sides. It has to be half of the length of the parallel sides if it connects the midpoints of the non-parallel sides. And we can see that in a triangle. We can see that in all kinds of figures. But here we know for a fact that if I take x plus 2 plus x plus 12, 2x plus 14, that's got, and divide that by 2, that's got to equal 10. So x plus 7 equals 10 tells me that x equals 3. So the parallel sides are 15 and 5. And the area of a trapezoid is going to be 1/2 the sum of the parallel bases, 5 plus 15, times the height, 15. So 1/2 of 20 times the height gives me the area of the entire trapezoid as 150 square units. B. Question 18. Points A, B, C, D, and E are collinear, and they're on the line in that order. Collinear means they're on the same line. So I'm just going to make a line segment, and A to E, and I'll put in B, and I'll put in C, and I'll put in D. And they said that AC is 15. And they said that BE is 19. And they said that BC and DE are the same length. And that AB and CD are the same length. Well, AB to BC, that AC is 15, which means that CE has got to be 15. And if this is 19, then we've got to have that BC is 4 because of the overlap. And this is 11, and this is 11, and this is 4. And we can see that everything adds up, and that the distance from A to E must be 30. Question 19. In question 19, Roy wants to construct a circular koi pond in his garden. He's got a square space that's measuring 16 by 16. And into that, he's going to put his circular koi pond so that it fills up the square space, touching the edges. And what we want to know is what area of the square space is not inside the pond. So we want to know what is the area outside the pond, but inside the square. Well, common sense says we should take the area of the square and take out the area of the pond. So if this is 16 by 16, that's 16 squared. And this would make the radius 8 because the diameter of the circle is 16. So minus pi r squared, 64 pi. And if we put that into a calculator, that comes out to be like 54.93-ish. So 55. It's got about 55 square feet of not water in that square space. Question 20. A triangle has side lengths of 10, 8, and 12, respectively. Which of the following values is closest to the area of that triangle? Well, there's a fact. Now, this isn't to scale. I'm just saying 10, 8, 12 is this triangle. That if we know the three sides of a triangle, there's a formula called Heron's that we can use. And Heron's uses what's called the semi-perimeter. Here I'll say S. The semi-perimeter is the sum of the three sides divided by 2. So in our case, the sum of the semi-perimeter is going to be 10 plus 8 plus 12, which is 30 divided by 2, or 15. So Heron says this, that the area is equal to the square root of the product of the semi-perimeter times the quantities of the semi-perimeter minus side lengths. The quantities, I should say. 15 minus 12 And so we use this idea of the square root of s times s minus a times s minus b times s minus c. And if we take that and stick it into a calculator, we're going to get, oh, like 39.6, which is about 40. So 40 is your correct answer here. Question 21. The distance from the center of the base of a certain cylinder. So here's a cylinder. It's like an Amazon delivery, kind of crushed on one side. But let's make believe that it's not, that Brian can draw. Note that the diameter or radius at the top and the bottom would be the same here. So the radius here is the same as the radius there, which is half the diameter. So the distance from the center of the base to the edge of the cylinder base is half the height. So they said the radius is height over 2. And they gave us the volume. Well, I know that volume of a cylinder is the base area, pi r squared, times the height. And so 54 pi must equal pi times h over 2 squared times h. Or 54 must equal h cubed over 3. Or 216 must equal h cubed. So h equals 6. And this tells me here that, well, if I take the volume and divide it by the height, I get the area of a base. So 54 pi over 6 equals 9 pi. Well, B is your answer. Number 22. A circle with a diameter 6 is centered at the point 710. And there's some point A at negative 1/2 6 on the same plane. And I want to know, what is the longest possible distance in units from A to a point on the circle? Well, I'm going to draw this because the picture tells the story quite quickly. So we're at 7, 10, and we'll say negative 1/2 6 is right there. So negative 1/2 6 and 7, 10, and it's got a radius of 3. Let me draw a circle around that. Let me center that circle. So in effect, what I want is I want to know what would be the distance from this point through the center of the circle to the far side of the circle. What would be that distance? Well, I know that the radius is 3. That was given. So I know this part's 3, and I know I can find this using the distance formula. I know that this distance, d, is going to have to be 3 plus d being this, the square root of, well, 7 plus 1/2, so 15 halves squared, plus 10 minus 6 would be 4 squared. And note that 4 is 8 halves. And so this is 15 halves. And this is 8 halves. And if I go ahead and work that out, I'm going to get that this is 17 halves squared because this is an 8, 15, 17 triangle. So I should have 3 plus 17 halves. So that's going to be 23 halves, which I could write as 11.5. And you're done.